All right, so let's talk the Cup Series at Phoenix. It's myself and Crazy Kev. What's up, Kev?
Sup?
All right, so we're gonna do a quick final picks video going over our interest levels, final kind of reasonings and thoughts why we're high on these guys. Races this afternoon, I think at like 3:45, 4 o'clock, something like that. So plenty of time to watch the video, digest, get your lines and prepare for the slate. But if you guys do want this, it's at Fast Cars FM over on our Twitter. But we'll just kind of dive right into it. So for me, I think if you're looking at the expensive range, from Larson to Hamlin, there's a couple different ways you can go. But remember, when you are picking your drivers, you have to play that narrative out in your head of like, okay, if I am playing this guy, how is he going to score me points? How is he going to fit into the optimal lineup? So we do know that Larson posted the best practice times. He looked good on the long run. He looked good on the short run. However, he does have to start in the back. Um, so even though he qualifies seventh, he's going to start from the rear of the field. So when he automatically starts the race, he's going to have negative place differential points. Don't know if that's going to drop his ownership at all. But if you are playing Larson today, it's because you expect him to get up front later in the race. So I like pairing Larson with potentially an early dominator who we'll touch on, a little bit later. And then if you aren't playing Larson, or if you're looking to someone to pair with Larson, you could look at a Busch, a Logano, or a Hamlin. I just feel a little bit more confident in some of the drivers in the 9K range to get out front and lead early. So for me, the highest guy that I'm interested in the top range is Larson. But is there any other guys in that top range, Kev, that you like?
Yeah, like the other Kyle this week as well. Starting 11th, doesn't have to go to the rear like Larson does, so just offers a little bit of that earlier potential for him to get up into that top five or top spot, lead some laps. I think he definitely has the ability to do that at some point this race. Obviously, paying 11K for him, you're hoping he does that, and then so I'm kind of my main line so far. I'm kind of leaning either having one of the Kyles paired with some other guys. But then, like my 20 max and stuff, I do find myself with a lot of Logano and Hamlin. Just they're both good drivers on these types of tracks. Hamlin obviously made some adjustments and has some really good speed, qualified second. So there's a chance that he, leads at the minimum like that first stage if he can get in front of Blaney. And yeah, so I find myself kind of on the two Kyles, Joey and Denny, and I'll just touch on Chase real quick with he is one of the better drivers in the series. Starts 19th, so he offers the most PD out of all these guys, but he just didn't really have the speed this week. Who says they won't have some adjustments made and he'll be up there, but just there hasn't been the speed there. He kind of hasn't shown any dominator potential so far this year. So, I mean, if you're running 20 lines, maybe one with him is not a bad idea just in case something happens, but kind of trying to avoid him. I think there's a lot better plays for, especially that salary at this week.
Yeah, I think it just kind of comes down to, how you want to spread out your ownership and like where you want to draw those lines, kind of in the sand. So for me, I really try to, if I am playing multiple lines, I really try to shrink my driver pool to, maybe 10, 12 drivers and kind of mix and match from there, because not all these drivers are going to work out. So I think Larson and Busch are kind of good cash options. Not that they're bad GPP plays, and Logano and Hamlin would be a little bit more, tournament based type of plays. And then from there, if you drop down to the 9K range, it's interesting. Like, coming into the week, we were really high on Truex. I think a lot of people were, and his practice times weren't great, and he didn't qualify great either. But because of that, he starts, right in the middle of the pack. He offers some good place differential. He's not going to be an early lap leader for you, so I'm curious to see kind of what his ownership looks like. I think if we get long green flag runs, I think his car could come in, at the second half of kind of that long run and, be a charger. But for me, the two guys that I'm really interested out of this range, who I think can be those early lap leaders that you can pair, with a Larson or a Busch, would be Blaney and Byron. Blaney starts on the pole. Phoenix is a relatively short, flat track with a lot of laps. So there's a lot of dominator points up for grabs, and Blaney is, in the best position to pick up all those early dominator points. It's probably going to be pretty high owned. So if you're looking for, a bit more of a contrarian, GPP type of early lap leader, I think Byron is a solid option for you. Looking at his practice times and where he qualified, this car has good speed, and if Blaney has an issue or isn't able to take advantage of the early restart, maybe Byron is someone who can sneak out front and give you those early laps led. Even if they don't, I think both Blaney and Byron both showed good enough speed to have top 5 cars throughout the day. So I don't mind even playing both of them together. But curious on your thoughts for that range, Kev.
Yeah, I think Blaney and Byron are, again, two of my more favorite plays on the slate. Like last week, hopefully Blaney just doesn't find himself in a pot of bad luck again this week, and he can actually finish his race. So I think if he does, he has a really solid chance of potentially winning this race, and at a minimum, clocking off a bunch of dominator points for us. And then I like Kevin Harvick as well. Had top 10 speed in practice, so he's good. Wasn't great, but top 10 is pretty good, especially when you're starting 16th. So you offer some PD there, a lot more safety built in than some of these other guys around him. And we do know this is one of his best track shoes. He runs really well here, so I have a hard time seeing him dominate this race. Maybe I could see maybe getting a handful of laps led or something, but he just hasn't really shown that specialness since he dominated that 2020 season. Kind of struggled a little bit as just a team and an organization. But I definitely have him a good bit in some of my lines, and there's could be that dark horse that comes in lower owned than he should for what he normally does at this track. And then if we move down into this 8K range, we really like Reddick. He's been one of the better drivers so far this season, which is cool to see. This next gen car kind of allowed some of that talent that's always been there show up when you're not limited by equipment quite as much. He was fast again in practice, pretty more or less top 5 in both short and long run speed. Starts 12th, so it gives us a little bit of that upside for him to move up. No reason he shouldn't be a top 10 car. He'd probably compete for a top 5, and we've seen him lead a bunch of laps so far this year, so there's nothing to say he can't do that again. And then I like Kurt too. He finally gets a decent starting spot for us, so doesn't have to start at the back, so he doesn't have to pass 100 and some cars to get a top 10 this week. So that's someone to keep an eye on. We've seen that equipment run pretty good. Him and Bubba were both running top 15 last week for a good portion of the race. There's no reason to think he can't do that again, possibly move up, and just with Harvick just being a little bit more than him and some of these other guys right below him will probably come in pretty low owned. So running multi-lines or just want to differentiate a little bit, that's a way to go about it. And then Chastain as well. We saw him run really well last week. Trackhouse as a whole this year has been doing pretty good. And then once again this week, Chastain had really good speed in practice, starts 17th, so he kind of offers you that upside again, similar to kind of Kurt and Reddick, but just offers that a little bit more starting 17th. And there's no reason to think he shouldn't be at least a top 10 car again this week.
Yeah, for me, when you look at lineup construction, I think you want, potentially 2 to 3, drivers who have the ability to get out front, who have the ability to lead laps, to pick up fast laps. And then from there, pairing those 2 to 3 drivers with, value plays, guys who look fast, who look underpriced, or guys who start deep in the field, who offer a lot of place differential. So I think Reddick is one of those, potential third dominators that you might see. He's probably not as likely to get out front as like a Byron or a Blaney. But, he's significantly cheaper than that and has had really fast speed all year long. Sometimes he is a little more aggressive, so sometimes that can get you into trouble, but his upside is a lot higher than most of the guys in his range there. So I do like Reddick a lot. And then dropping down to the 7K range, I don't think you should really overthink this too much. I think you just look at, if you are playing guys in the front, you need to pair them with some good place differential plays. I think 2 easy place differential plays you can look at today are going to be AJ Allmendinger and Stenhouse. Stenhouse wasn't able to, or he's swapping an engine, so he did not qualify. Therefore, he starts, dead last on the field for $7,000. He's not going to lose you any points. He can only gain you points. We just hope he doesn't run into the same situation that Alfredo ran in where he starts dead last and the car isn't able to take the green flag. So for whatever reason, if that is the case, just make sure you're watching pre-race to make a potential last second swap. And then AJ starts pretty deep in the field, and we've seen the College cars run pretty fast this year. But about you, Kev, do you think there's anyone else in that 7K range worth talking about?
No, I think you nailed it. I mean, you have multiple lines. You could maybe sprinkle in like a Cindric or a Jones or Dylan just for some get off those other two guys. But I think, yeah, once you get down into this area, you're just looking for that PD, just a way to kind of build a little safety in some of those other points. Since you got the dominator points with your other three guys, these 3 or 4 guys should all be PDs, kind of how I've been building this week. And so far this year kind of seems to be the way that's led you to the money. But in the 6K range, those two guys for the PD that we like the most are going to be Bubba and Suarez. I really like Bubba again this week. We saw him run a top 15 last week, and he was running right there with Kurt, so we know he's able to get the same out of the equipment as Kurt is. Again, he had top 15 speed in practice, starts 27th, so that offers you a good bit of PD upside there. There's no reason he shouldn't be a top 20 car, potentially top 15 or more, depending on what happens. We've seen some crazy stuff happen. And then Haley's Wells, another play I don't mind this week, starts 28th, so he kind of seems to start right around that 28th every week. We know these college cars are good, should be able to move up. Yeah, it comes in a little bit cheaper than those other guys.
Yeah, I'm curious how popular the 6K range is going to be, because I can see a lot of people playing Allmendinger and Stenhouse together and then dropping down and playing like a 5 or 4K driver and then trying to slam in, 3 drivers basically from the 9K range and up, or, the 8K range and up. So kind of depends on your construction there. But I think Suarez and Wallace are 2 drivers who start relatively deep in the field, who had good practice times, who are in good equipment. I mean, we saw Chastain, and it's a completely different track, but we saw Chastain get out front and lead laps last week. We've seen, the Chevy drivers run well, and, Suarez is significantly cheaper than Chastain and even starts deeper in the field. So I like both of those 2 plays as punt options, or, place differential value plays. And if we look at the punts, there's kind of really 3 punts I think that stand out the most. I think if you are playing cash, and if you play the narrative out of, okay, we know the tires have been an issue here, we know cars have been spinning out. If there are a lot of wrecks and this turns into a pure attrition race, I don't mind, Todd Gilliland or even BJ McLeod. McLeod's cheaper. He's going to come in way under owned than Gilliland should. McLeod has finished in the 20s every race this year. Gives you a little bit of salary relief. And with punt plays, I think you really just want to play guys who start deep in the field who can't hurt you at all. So I like both McLeod and Gilliland. And then if you are playing GPP, I'll let you talk about Harrison Burton a little bit, Kev.
Yeah, I do like Burton this week. He's running that Wood Brothers car, which is Penske affiliate. So by far and away the best equipment in this range. You're getting more or less Penske equipment for under 6K, which is a steal in and of itself there. And he's ran pretty well this year so far. He just kind of always see himself in trouble, gets caught up in an accident, or just gets a little aggressive, or just loses it a little bit and just ends up getting bad finishes. So as long as he can finish this race cleanly, I think there's potential for him to easily get a top 20 or more than that. He's, shown he can do it, hang with the big boys, and just as long as he can finish this race, I think he could be someone. And when I've been building lines, just kind of seems like I end up on him. I don't know if that's going to drive his ownership up. I can't imagine he's going to come in high on just because he hasn't finished a race or finished a race well. Yeah, I kind of don't mind him. Lines kind of end up on him. I do like Todd as well. He believe he's finished top 25 in every race this year other than the Daytona 500. And you're getting him pretty cheap. And then I'll touch on McDowell too. We have him as low, but I know Rich is a little bit higher on him than us. But just in general on these punt plays, I don't think really any of them are a bad play. I'd lean a little bit more towards the PD side of stuff just because they offer you a little bit more safety. But we've kind of seen this year has been a great equalizer. We've seen some of these guys run really well. So if you are running like 20 lines, I'd kind of or what I'm doing at least, is spreading out my ownership on these guys a little bit in case one of them can't start the race for some reason, or that has an early incident, goes a few laps down, you don't just get completely screwed because you got 80% ownership on Todd, and then Todd spins and goes 2 laps down on lap 10, and then you're just done for the day. So I've been spreading my ownership out a little bit. We got our favorites, but I don't really think you can go wrong with any of them. Most of these guys start pretty far backwards. They can't necessarily hurt your line all that much.
Cool. Well, thank you guys for tuning in, and best of luck this afternoon, and thanks for all the support too. Like I said in the Xfinity video, we just hit the 300 subscribers milestone, so we're on our way to 400. So thank you guys for all the support, and that'll do it for the final picks video for Phoenix, and we'll catch you guys next weekend.